First of all, this Resistance of Vision sounded fantastic to me. But I had never heard of a traveling film festival. Why was that something you wanted to create and be a part of?
So the idea came from Jeff Ross, who's my collaborator. And there were two sort of driving factors. One being the election, and he really wanted to do something meaningful with cinema. And the other was the Human Rights Watch Film Festival, which has a traveling component. And it went under after about 30 years. It closed its doors. And so he was inspired by also Wild and Scenic, which is a traveling festival of environmental films, and so pitched me on this idea of a traveling festival of social justice cinema. And I started to think about it as a way to get activists and organizers together right now. And, this idea that, not that festivals or cinemas couldn't
Mhm.
host this, but that we would be primarily reaching out to activists and organizers, and this festival would play in non-traditional spaces, outside of
Mhm.
cinemas, so like community centers, libraries, school classrooms, anywhere where you can gather people, you've got seats, and you can make it dark enough to see the image,
Mhm.
is really the idea.
Awesome. The films chosen for this festival are very wide range of topics. How do how were the films chosen?
So I started with the four programs, the one on racial justice, environmental, labor and housing, and gender and reproductive justice. And then from there, it was sort of open, what sort of fit into that category. The one thing that I've been saying is I'm not really interested in films where folks are working on political campaigns or, signing petitions. That my idea of resistance is more sort of community organizing. And so I was looking for films that really talked about that. And so it's a whole variety of different approaches to organizing and activism. And then I wanted each program to be as intersectional as possible. I wanted to make sure that we were talking about immigration. I wanted to make sure that, there were issues of disability in these films. I wanted to make sure that we had international cinema. I wanted to make sure that, we brought in as many different intersecting issues as we possibly could.
With the political situation here in the U.S. getting worse and worse, and education being under attack, how important was it for you to bring this information to the public so they can have a different point of view and hopefully be educated on some of these topics?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the whole idea was to get films into communities that don't necessarily have access to these films. Short films, don't travel the way that features sometimes do. And the idea of the shorts program is you can cover lots of topics, lots of
Mhm.
perspectives, all in one program. And so yeah, for Jeff, the climate that we're in right now was the whole driver for him
Mhm.
wanting to set up this film festival. And for me, talking to a lot of people who don't know where they fit, right? They're seeing what's going on. They're horrified. People being taken off the street by ICE, schools under attack, transgender healthcare under attack, but feeling kind of paralyzed. Like, what do I do? And so the idea was to get people together who are all kind of feeling like this
Mhm.
with people who are organizing, who are doing things, so that people can get plugged in. So the idea is you don't just sort of watch a movie and walk away and say, "Oh, that was a great story. I
Mhm.
really, something I hadn't thought of before." But really, oh, this is motivating me to do something. Where do I plug in? Who is working on this issue in my community?
Mhm.
Like in Providence, for example, where I live, housing is a huge
Mhm.
crisis. Home prices, rents have skyrocketed. There are a lot of folks that are unhoused. It's really easy to evict people. And so that was a thing that I looked around and saw in my community as an issue
Mhm.
and got plugged in. And so that's the kind of thing that I'm hoping for people to get out of this experience.
Uh, for a lot of people, they don't quite understand what being an activist is or being connected in the activism community. How are you, with this film festival, helping people understand that even the small things count when it comes to activism?
Yeah, I mean, so the hope is that these post-screening conversations, and it's really up to the hosts what they decide they want to do, but we're encouraging people to have activists and organizers on these panels and talking about the kind of stuff, the practical things that they're doing, and the variety of things that they're doing. I think people think that activism is one thing,
Mhm.
right? That you're risking arrest, right? Every time you're going and you're blocking the doors to buildings and yes, that's one thing that people do. There are things that people do that take those kind of risks. But then there's also the people who feed people, for
Mhm.
example, right? And there are all kinds of things people can do according to their skills, according to their risk levels, according to, their comfort, according to. So there's so many ways to be an activist. And so I think that's kind of what we're hoping also comes across in the film, right?
Mhm.
Like we've got this film Street Vet,
Mhm.
and there was a vet in the UK who was encountering unhoused folks and their pets and just thought, okay, this is a thing I can do. I can offer my labor for free,
Mhm.
and enrich the lives of folks in my community and their pets. So like so many different ways to be an activist, both in the films and then hopefully it's something that folks hear in these conversations after the screenings.
Mhm. Uh, for the film festival, how are the stops chosen, and are there any stops that you wanted to hit that haven't been able to get clearance or participation from?
Well, so we only chose the first four places where the festival's launching. So the in-person screenings are just a way to get attention, visibility for this for the festival, and anybody can book it. So we wanted to have screenings in four different regions of the country. So the Brattle in Cambridge, that's where I'm based in the Boston, Providence area. Jeff Ross, who's my collaborator, runs festivals in San Francisco, so there's a screening there. We're both very fond of Leela Meadow-Connors, who runs Mama Film in Wichita, Kansas, so she's another host. And then we wanted one in the South, and everyone was recommending Sidewalk in Birmingham. So that's the fourth place. And then from there, anyone can book it anywhere. I mean, really anywhere in the world. But,
Mhm.
I imagine as we start to roll this out, we're going to be pitching, national organizations in the U.S. and encouraging them to share it with all of their different local chapters. And see, we're figuring this out as we
Mhm.
go along. We're building it as we go along. But I'm hoping with this, travels all over the country and we're trying to make it as easy as possible for people that don't necessarily do this work, who put on film
Mhm.
screenings, make it really easy for them to do that, to package the films in such a way to create a guide for anybody putting on these screenings. So yeah, it hasn't, we're just about to start rolling it out.
Awesome. Well, I hope the best of luck for this, and thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.